Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian, and today we are continuing our look at Mannlicher automatic pistols. When we left off last, we were looking at the model of 1896/7/01/03 pistols, which were distinctive for having a detachable magazine in front of the pistol grip. This model was tried by a number of different militaries, rejected by all of them, and not commercially successful. So Ferdinand von Mannlicher decided to make some changes, and the most significant change, well, the one really significant change that he made to go from that 1896 pattern gun to this, which is the 1900, 1901, 1905 series, is to move the magazine into the grip of the pistol. Now, at the same time, he also, we would think of it today, went back a step and got rid of the detachable magazine idea, instead reverting to fixed magazines fed by stripper clips. But in the process, you end up with a far more elegant pistol. Better balanced, lighter, smaller, cheaper, pretty much better in every way. He also increased the magazine capacity. Those detachable magazines held 6 rounds. These guns hold either 8 or 10, depending on the frame size. So, in fact, a lot of people consider the 1901 and 05 pattern Mannlichers to be one of the most elegant pistols ever made, and I'm tempted to agree with them. Now, these pistols also introduced a new cartridge, confusingly given the same designation as the old cartridge. You'll find this referred to as 763 or 765 Mannlicher. It is 765 by 21 millimeter. It is a straight wall case, which is the big visual difference between it and the older bottlenecked version. And this is a little bit weaker of a cartridge. It fires an 85 grain bullet at 1,000 feet per second. That would be 5.5 grams at 305 meters per second. So a little bit slower than the 1,250 feet per second of the previous pattern of Mannlicher. In the process, by making the cartridge a little bit lighter, he was able to get rid of the locked breech system. And these are actually a delayed blowback. They're kind of in that gray area between blowback and delayed blowback, but they do have a spring-loaded cammed lever that the slide has to force down before it can open up. And it's not actually a locked breech because it's just pressure that opens it, but it does delay the opening slightly. In fact, if you're interested in seeing some high-speed footage of one of these firing, a 1905 pattern gun, check out the description below. I have a link there to some high-speed video I did of one. Now, these guns were also tested by a number of national military forces around the world. They were tested by the Austro-Hungarians in 1904 and 05. They were tested by the German military in 1902. They were tested by the U.S. military in 1903, sort of tested by the U.S. The U.S. got one and gave it a rough assessment, and their conclusion was, this looks interesting. They thought that it needed to be a 9mm rather than 7.65mm because 7.65 was too small for consideration. And the trials officers came to their recommendation was we ought to buy 50 of these in 9mm to assess. That went up the chain of command and was rejected, and so none were actually purchased. Sorry, Mannlicher. The Germans also rejected them, and so did the Austro-Hungarians. So ultimately, none of the major military powers in Europe adopted this pistol, but it did get one major military adoption, and that was Argentina, which, especially at that time, was a pretty significant military force, and Argentina ended up buying something like 6,000 of the model 1905 guns. We have 2 of them here. We'll take a look at those in a moment. Most of the rest of these were sold on the commercial market, where they were finally a reasonably successful pistol for Mannlicher. Now, it's not like he's some starving artist desperate for his pistols to be accepted by somebody so that he can afford next month's rent. No, Mannlicher was an extremely successful designer, and in particular in the area of long rifles, where he had a number of his rifle designs adopted by a bunch of very large militaries, notably the straight-pull Steyr-Mannlicher rifles. So he was in good shape, but obviously he wanted to try and have some success with handguns too, and commercial sales are really about as close as he got. This was the best-selling Mannlicher pistol, and it was okay. It was not a failure, definitely not by any means, but it also wasn't a barn-burning success like the broom-handle Mauser or the Luger. All right, so here's our standard model of 1901 Mannlicher, and in total about 1,000 of these pistols, this model, were made. We have a couple markings on the outside. These were all made by Steyr, so they are marked on the left side, Waffenfabrik Steyr, and on the right side, System Mannlicher. There is no model date on these. You'll find a serial number on the bottom of the frame here. And these are, in fact, very comfortable pistols to handle and fire. It looks like my hand comes up over the grip a bit there, but these don't really bite. At least the 1905s don't. I've shot those on several occasions. And just slick, handy, lightweight little pistols. Very nice. Now, the way they operate is this whole assembly comes back. There is a recoil spring here located under the barrel. It does have a fixed barrel, and you'll notice on the 1901, the rear sight is located on the back of the barrel. There it is. Front sight's obviously on the front of the barrel. This gives you, well, you have a decent sight picture there. Oh, there's your sight picture. Not too shabby. And having both the sights fixed on the barrel is pretty good for the inherent accuracy of the gun. Now these are single action only, so to fire the first shot you do have to manually cock the hammer, and then of course each subsequent shot it automatically recocks there. There is no decocker, however there's a very simple mechanical safety here which flips up and down. Now you can see that lug, when this is in the down position and I drop the hammer hits that lug and does not hit the firing pin there in the center. So that's a pretty effective safety. If you bump, you manage to push that somehow, which is going to be a little difficult, that'll fire, but the hammer can't hit the firing pin. When you push that safety up, now when you drop the hammer, lo and behold, it hits the firing pin and fires the gun. We have easy, nice access to the working parts of the gun. We have a disassembly catch right here. What you do is push that down and then pull this back. Pull that off. And now you can see all the lock work on this side. Really quite simple guns. That pushes the sear back, releases the hammer. That's it. That's all there is to it. Very late in production, they did actually replace this leaf spring with a coil spring instead. A good modernization. Unfortunately, I don't have an example of that to show you, but that would only be on the very late production 1905s. Now I mentioned that this is a delayed blowback gun. This is the delay mechanism right here. We have a V-spring right there, which also acts as the hammer spring. And it's pushing up on this, and in order to open the slide, cock that. In order to open, the slide has to, there we go, push down. You can see we have a little angled surface there, and there's a recess in the slide that drops into, right there. So you have to force that lever down before the slide can open. It's a very simple type of delaying mechanism, and it does the job. It slows the breech from opening just long enough to make this gun safe in that straight-walled 7.65 Mannlicher cartridge. There's our recoil spring under the barrel. You can pull that out and then pull off the slide, but I don't think there's any real need to do that. A couple other interesting examples of the 1901 here to take a look at. This one is actually one of the guns that was tested by the German military in their 1902 pistol trial. That was a trial that also included the broom-handle Mauser and the Luger and the Mannlicher. So this is one of those guns. It has its serial number there over the system Mannlicher stamp and a very small crown D. It's hard to make out, but it is actually right there on the side of the barrel. And you'll find that crown D on all of the other test pistols from that trial as well. In all other regards, this German trials gun is identical in construction and layout, so it's a standard pattern gun. You could also get a nice fancy cased version of the Mannlicher, so it comes with tools. This is the key to the case itself, and then cleaning rod, screwdriver. These were fed by stripper clip, so there's an example of that 7.65 Mannlicher cartridge. These 1901s hold 8 rounds, so 8-round clips. And you might have noticed that this is a slightly smaller version of the gun. So you did also have the option of a slightly shorter barrel. It's about an inch shorter, maybe 20 millimeters shorter. And the short guns no longer have this fixed lanyard loop on the bottom. There we go. You can see the barrel length difference a little bit better right there. Mechanically, though, this is identical to the larger gun, just different barrel length options. the Model 1901s are being sold for a couple of years. They're selling slowly. They're not doing all that well. And Mannlicher decides to make a few changes. He scales the gun up. Not a lot, but a little bit. So we have our 1901 here and our 1905 here. Again, most of the 1905s out there are either sold to the Argentinian military or commercial. They were not accepted by any other major militaries. So most of the ones you find will be one of those two patterns. Now, if we overlay these, you can see that the grip frame on the 1905 is longer, and at the same time, the frame is just slightly longer and the barrel is longer. That gives you a good visual for the difference in the barrel length and the frame length here. This frame is about 8 millimeters longer. What you get with the longer grip is actually an increase in capacity from 8 rounds here to 10 rounds on the 1905, which I'm sure a bunch of people liked. Now, there was also a change in the rear sight. The 1901 pattern gun here has the rear sight fixed to the barrel. The 1905 does away with that and puts the rear sight on the very back of the actual operating slide, like that. Now, you may look at that and say, well, doesn't that inherently decrease the accuracy of the gun because you now have the rear sight on a moving piece instead of affixed to the barrel? The answer is yes, in theory it does. In practical reality, probably not something anybody noticed, and you do actually increase your sight radius by that much in the process. And frankly, that probably makes up for, or more than makes up for, any change in practical accuracy because this piece is moving. So for the 1905 model, we're still seeing the Waffenfabrik Steyr, where they're being manufactured, marking, and now they've also added the 1905 date, and we still have that system Mannlicher on the opposite side. Now, this doesn't last forever. This is a relatively low production, or early production gun. This is serial number 2202. When they got later into production, and in fact this is almost at the very end, 10,400, first off they had to change the number and run it vertically because they didn't have enough space for all the digits horizontally. And then they moved all of the markings onto the left side. So everything's over there with nothing at all on the right grip. This might have had something to do with the sales to Argentina. All of our controls are the same here. We still have the same single action hammer. We have the same safety that simply blocks the hammer from hitting the firing pin when it's engaged. Pretty simple. The disassembly is still the same. We have this lug here, which allows us to, ooh, this one's sticky. There we go. Pull that off and we have the same mechanics and the same delaying system. The 1905 was simply a way to scale this up, increase the capacity, and hopefully attract more buyers. So there are a couple of variations in the 1905, different options you had as a commercial buyer. You had two different lengths of frame, here and here, that's the long, that's the short, and you had two different lengths of barrel. We have a short barrel here and long barrels there. Now there is actually a difference in the long frames. You did actually run into a short toe and a long toe, and we'll look at those in a moment. But you could kind of mix and match. So here we have long barrel, long frame, here we have long barrel, short frame, and here we have long frame, short barrel. You know, pick whichever you want. The short frame is the same size as the Model 1901, gives you an 8-round capacity. The long frame guns hold 10 rounds. So the Argentine military was the one major single contract for these pistols, and theirs were of the long frame, long barrel variety. And they're noted for really the only distinguishing marks are a couple of Argentine Army marks. There's a crest here on the right side. Now a lot of these guns were surplused in I think the 60s, and almost all of them when surplused had these crests ground off. So normally when you find one of these, if you find one that has a big bright spot here, or clearly something that's been refinished right there, that's because it was an Argentine surplus gun. They ground the crest off. Now the Argentine guns also have this RA marking on the back, which did not get ground off on the surplus guns. So you can also identify them by finding that. Here with these two Argentine guns, I can show you the difference in the contour of the grip frame. These are both long frame guns. This is a short toe, this is a long toe, just based on this contour. And that's purely an aesthetic thing. It doesn't have any mechanical relevance. Now the last one I want to take a look at is pretty interesting. This is a standard commercial 1905, but it's had an aftermarket grip safety added to it. This is a grip safety invented by a guy named Tambor, and if the grip safety is not depressed, the trigger will not fall. And we can pull the screw out and remove the grip panel. And we can take a look at how this safety actually works. Really simple. By the way, this is standard. Under the grip panels, these are just flat because there is an internal magazine assembly inside, and that's why they're not hollow. Interesting that this particular one has this swiveling front-mounted lanyard loop, which is not standard. Can't tell you who put that on or why, but it may have had something to do with the safety. Now let's pull the frame off here. And so this front strap of the grip safety prevents the sear from rotating. You can see it can't go anywhere. When I push that forward, now it's able to travel. And then the rear strap actually prevents the gun. If I have just that, that drops only to the half-cock position, and then this hook catches the hammer there and locks it in place. So you have to actually have both of these depressed in order to dry fire, well, or live fire the gun. So Tambor patented this safety in 1901, and it was applied, I believe, to a couple of different types of gun. I've also seen a Theodorovich Kernka, or a Roth Theodorovich gun that had a safety added to it. There isn't any sort of marking on the safety, so it's hard to prove exactly who put it in or who designed it, but I'm pretty sure that Roth safety was also a Tambor design. Well, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something about some of these variations of Mannlicher, late model Mannlicher automatic pistols. Very cool to be able to look at all the different variants here side by side so you can really see what there was and how they compare to each other. If you enjoyed this sort of footage, please consider checking out my Patreon page, linked in the description below. It's support from folks there that really makes it possible for me to put together collections like this that I can find and bring them to you guys. Thanks for watching.